Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our online workshop series on biodiversity, which began last July 27. Okay, we are on our last day, and it's turning out to be a beautiful morning. I hope it is, wherever you are in this world. Our series is entitled Conservation, Communicating Communicating Conservation in the Age of Social Media. Once again, I am Henry Kalilong, who, for the last time, yay, I'm sure a lot of you are getting fed up with my voice. I will be moderating our webinar for today. I woke up early this morning and for the first time in weeks, covered up with a blanket. So most likely, you all had trouble getting up as well. Ang sarap matulog sa ganitong panahon. But we have work to do and webinars to attend. Sayang yung certificate, di ba? So, thank you so much for logging in. Wait, are you really there? Baka iniwan mo lang gadget mo sa living room at naglalaba ka na. But it's okay. It's all part of the new normal, isn't it? Normal na ngayon nang humarap sa madla maski naka-shorts lang. Basta, bawal tumayo. Okay, just helping you look for that silver lining. We may all be in a difficult situation, but it definitely has its perks. Cleaner air, no need to wrestle with the morning rush hour, and so on and so forth. Plus, we get to learn from very productive webinars such as this one. Our participants since day one hail from all parts of the country. Bulacan, Batangas, Palawan, Bacolod, Davao, even as far as Tagum City, Agusan del Norte, and Cotabato. Cheers for the internet. Do you still remember the days when all we had was snail mail? Do you recall the last time you licked a postage stamp? Maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga nakikilahok sa ating webinar. We even had a participant from Timor-Leste yesterday. I had to Google that. I thought it was a typo for Leyte. Today, we are joined by, let me see. We have, of course, Quezon City. We have someone from Baguio. Okay, Miss Ada Menzi. We have Achilles Othello from Isabela Province. We have Ging Faustino from Camarines Sur. Our tour guide, Ed Ibanez from Bacolod City. And Christy Baltazar from Cagayan de Oro. Janessa Salo from Agusan del Norte. Jane Manarpies from Tanza. All right. Diwani Cervantes from Davao. Okay, as much as I want to read all of your names, this is not a radio show. Okay, so moving on. Okay, let me, there, okay. There, okay. So a good morning to everyone, and I hope we are all enjoying the weather. Wherever we are in this lonely planet we call home, okay? Let me thank once again our partners who made this series of webinars possible. The Biodiversity Management Bureau of the DENR, Team Energy Foundation, Energy Development Corporation, and Crocodilus Porosus Philippines. Thank you very much, sponsors, for helping us with this event. I would also like to inform at this point everyone who are joining us just for today, okay, if you just tuned in, that the webinars for the past 3 days since Monday and the one for today will be available on our Facebook page and at the BCSP YouTube channel. Okay, please like our page and subscribe to our channel. Just search for Biodiversity PH. So by now, I'm sure that our attendees who have been with us since day one know what BCSP stands for. Let me see. This morning, I got curious and Googled what else it could stand for. Here's what I got. Board of Certified Safety Professionals. Yun yung unang lumabas sa Google. Come to think of it, tayo pa rin yun, di ba? If there are no forests and reefs, there are no people. Without your loving, but often frustrating, work to conserve nature's ecosystem services, then no one would be safe. So yes, we are the Board of Certified Safety Professionals. Okay, kidding aside, baka ilag out ako ni Ma'am Michelle. BCSP stands for Biodiversity Conservation Society of the Philippines. Allow me to give a little introduction to our first-timers. So this is your chance to zone out a bit, those who have been with us since day one. BCSP is a professional organization of wildlife researchers, managers, scientists, and conservationists. Formed with the fervent desire to advance wildlife research and conservation in the Philippines through collaborative research, BCSP provides technical assistance and training. We are also very much committed to increasing public awareness as reflected in our organization's mission vision. BCSP hosts the annual Philippine Biodiversity Symposium, an event where biodiversity conservation researchers and practitioners come together and share recent studies on Philippine biodiversity. Look at your screens and you can see how many dots there are, okay? Hindi po yan active fault lines or volcanoes. These are the venues, okay, from the past symposia. So as you can see, we are present, if not in all the islands, then at least in all the major faunal regions, okay? This is part of our commitment to biodiversity awareness, research, and conservation. However, the committee in charge of COVID-19 has other plans, and so we are forced to change the game plan for this year. Nonetheless, we are hoping that we can push through with the face-to-face symposium next year at the Father Saturnino Urios University in Butuan City. My apologies yesterday. If you are in the know, you know that I pronounced Butuan in the wrong way. No pun intended, okay? So we hope by then we can all rub elbows and drink together once again. Drink coffee, that is, okay? So as part of this new normal and in keeping with our mission vision, the idea of having a virtual coming together to still share findings of current research came about. BCSP will be holding an online digital forum on August 22 to 23, where students can present their research papers to an online audience. So please mark this in your calendars, August 22 to 23. Part of the idea of the online forum is this 4-day digital workshop, which ends today. We started last Monday. You are attending this in order for you to learn, hopefully, from our experts who are sharing their knowledge, their experiences in science communication, data presentation, and video storytelling. Okay? This is all very important because the bottom line, okay, maganda nga yung mga charts natin, maganda nga yung data natin, pero wala namang nakinig. So it is our job to also make sure that what we've worked on gets transmitted to those who need to know. Okay? Very, very important. And since we recognize the wide reach and strong influence of social media in our society, even before the pandemic, this webinar highlights how these tools can be used through this platform. So we hope to encourage scientists, researchers, and conservation practitioners to be science communicators for those who cannot speak. Okay? For those who cannot speak. Kung pwede lang, si Tama raw, si Haring Ibon, okay, ay magreklamo na. Pero let us be their voice. Okay? Very important din po for teachers to attend these series, even though we might feel out of place. I'm just a high school teacher. What am I doing here? Okay? Wag po, because your role as educators in grade school and high school is very, very important. Okay? Lahat po ng conservationists ngayon dumaan sa grade school and high school. And if you talk to them, there has been someone who influenced their viewpoint, who perhaps brought them to the forests, no? Or maybe dove with them in their first trip under the oceans. Okay? Our role as teachers are very important to hopefully encourage the next crop of field researchers and conservationists. Sa totoo lang po, okay, hayaan na po natin yung iba maging doktor, maging engineer, maging abogado. Okay, sa atin po sana, ang bias po, ang lahat ng estudyante natin ay maging field researchers. Okay. Now, before we go to the topic for today, okay, some house rules as usual so that we have a smooth flow for the session. So you have them in your screens, okay, highlighting number 3. Okay, so you may ask po, even though you are just watching, this is an interactive forum in which you can go ahead and type your questions in the comments page, in the comments part of your gadget, your screens, and rest assured, okay, someone will read that. If not me, then someone else, okay? Because in reality, we don't have all the time in the world as much as we want to show or answer all your questions, okay? Be that as it may, okay, we will be doing our best to encourage our speakers and other BCSP volunteers to start typing answers, okay, to your questions if we are not able to address them in the open forum. Okay? During the Q&A, I will be randomly picking questions. Rest assured po, random po yan. Okay? And yes, we will do our best to answer by typing, okay, in the days to come if ever meron kaming makaligtaan. Okay? Aside from being live streamed, I would also like to remind everyone that this webinar is recorded and it is shared through our Facebook page and YouTube channel. E-certificates, very important. If you want to have an e-certificate for today's session, kindly finish the survey before 8 a.m. tomorrow. Okay, so the link to the survey will be flashed at the end of the webinar. Okay, so kailangan po yan 8 a.m. before tomorrow. Okay, I hope that was quick enough. Since I know we're all excited for today's topic. In the past 3 days, we've listened to how conservation science should be communicated. And we've learned how to tell conservation stories through videos. Okay, so up next is, okay, good. Okay, so up next is a webinar entitled Let Your Data Speak for Itself, effectively communicating your science to the general public. So according to our speaker, whether we admit it or not, scientists' talk is tough to digest for the general public. Okay. So this workshop webinar will take you through the different ways of effectively communicating your data, from the concept of social math. Social math po, hindi po social math, okay, to simplified charts and graphs, and science talk devoid of jargon. Okay, so sige nga, try to explain that rising line in your graph without using the word trend or linear regression, okay? So with these tips, we hope to encourage more students and scientists to speak out, be heard, and most importantly, be understood. Today's speaker works as an assistant professor at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Okay? She teaches undergrad and graduate plant systematics, ecology, biogeography, and biostatistics. She finished her Ph.D. in Biodiversity and Evolutionary Science last 2016 in the Université de Montpellier in France. Okay, she obtained her MS Bio and BS Bio degrees from the University of the Philippines in Diliman. She is a National Geographic explorer and has been working on Philippine figs and fig wasps for a decade now. But she is still very youthful. Okay. She loves this study system because it is she loves to study this because it is intricate and specialized. Her lifelong goal is to see all the fig species in the Philippines and to document their wasp associations. She uses the fig wasp system to study plant and insect evolution and to look at how new species are produced. Okay. She also advocates the use of fig trees in forest restoration because they are an integral part of the tropical ecosystem. I might also add, fig trees form very prominent figures in our folklore. Okay, fig trees po, balete trees. Okay. She also studies the potential effects of climate warming on insect lifespan. In her free time, she loves to travel and to immerse herself in the outdoors, enjoying the pristine island beaches, the cool mountain air, and the star-studded night sky. But rest assured, she is still very sane nowadays, even if she cannot go out and travel. Let us all welcome Dr. Lillian Jennifer Rodriguez.
Morning,
Hi,
everyone.
ma'am.
Thank you for the nice
Yes,
introduction.
I hope you're still okay, even if you cannot go out.
Oo nga po eh. Soon, makakalabas din tayo.
Yes, okay. So take note, readers. Our speaker is available to go out. Okay. Sige pa. Take it away, Ma'am Lillian.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this talk and thank you for the introduction. So as mentioned by Sir Henry, I was trained as a scientist and not as a science communicator. Most of my experience as a science communicator came from the very recent past. So I'm also still trying to learn, but hopefully I will try to impart to you the tips that I have learned these few years. So uh, first question is, why do we communicate science? So why are we here? Why are you here? Why are we doing this webinar series? Why are we taking time to communicate science? So because science can change lives. So we know this. And we have a very good example this year. So yung nagsimula in 2020 natin by a Taal eruption. So when Taal erupted, PHIVOLs have actually been issuing regular alerts to the communities that live nearby so that when they knew na imminent na yung eruption, they were able to evacuate the communities very early on. So maliit lang yung mortality from the eruption. So that's because of science. Also, there was a news released by Dr. Bagtasa saying that there is data that yung volcanic ash plume that actually reached Manila were composed of very large particles so that there was no need for us to wear face masks. So it was important for us to know that so that we shouldn't be hoarding masks here in Metro Manila, but instead sending all the supply to communities that actually live near the volcano. So that is how science can change lives. So aside from changing lives, science can also change mindsets. It can change how we look at things, how we perceive things. So one good example that we have this year, so just last month, we had a good news that China actually removed pangolins from its list of approved traditional medicine. So it might have been because of lobbying by environmentalists, because of the increase in trafficking of the pangolins, or because of the decrease in populations, or maybe because of the absence of real scientific evidence that say that there's actually medicinal value to the pangolin scales. So maybe a combination of these reasons pushed China to actually remove pangolins from their list of traditional medicine. So closer to home, I'd like to show you an example of one of my favorite NGOs, the Philippine Eagle Foundation. So I think they're doing a really good job in convincing and converting communities who used to be hunters to become conservationists who lobby for the preservation of these Philippine eagles. So that is because of research that they had done, and they were able to change the mindset of these communities. So science can change lives, science can change mindsets. So because of those two reasons, it is very important to communicate science. So how then do we communicate science? We communicate science by simplifying it. Okay, so pause muna tayo. Kasi if you were here nung Monday, Dr. Ines told us that when you communicate science, you shouldn't simplify it because science in itself is a very complex issue. Nature has a complexity of its own. So you shouldn't take that science, you shouldn't take that complexity out of science. Okay, so tama yun. What I'm saying now is we have to simplify how we actually transmit the message. So we have to simplify how we communicate our science, which is still complex. So it's just also saying that we need to translate our science. So when we translate our science, it doesn't mean we're dumbing it down. So this is from National Geographic, so I'm not copyright for this one. So we don't dumb it down when we simplify it. So for example, I speak to you now in English because there is a larger chance of you understanding me if I talk to you in English than if I talk in French. Quand je parle en français, vous ne comprenez pas, right? So I speak in English because that is our common language. So that is the same when we speak to fellow scientists. So the scientists talk. When we talk to fellow scientists, we use terms, we use concepts that are, for us, is very convenient because we like to use precise terms. But people outside of our community will find it very hard to understand that. Just like when economists talk, or when social scientists talk, or when physicists talk. When I converse with physicists and I don't understand their language, it doesn't mean that I am less intelligent than them. It just means that I'm not familiar with the terms, I'm not familiar with the language, I don't speak that language. Okay? It doesn't mean that they have to dumb it down for me, it just means that we need to find a common ground. So that is what you have to do with science communication. You have to find the language that is common between you and your audience, so that when you transmit the message, it comes across very naturally. Okay, so I'd like to emphasize that because we really need to start talking to the general public. So I think BCSP is offering you a very good opportunity by offering webinar series like this. So I hope you can take advantage of it because nung time namin, hindi to available sa amin. So it's good that they're starting you early on in your scientific careers. So I'll be giving you 5 tips to be able to communicate your data effectively to the general public. So first tip is the use of social mathematics. So social mathematics is just using numbers that are relatable and very easy to imagine. So when using social math, we consider the context of the audience. So para mas madali maintindihan kung ano yung social math, I'll give you an example. So this is a typical result statement that you can find either in an abstract or in a scientific paper. So the bird species that I am working on has a tail length of 0.82 meters. So 0.82 meters. Na-imagine nyo ba yun kung ano yung 0.82 meters? For me, because I work measuring trees and measuring transects, 0.82 meters is easy to imagine. So mga ganyan yan, arm's length. Also for people who are used distance sampling, 0.82 meters is easy to imagine. Pero for someone who is not very used to measuring things, or even for Filipinos, we Filipinos, we measure distance actually not by distance, not by absolute distance, but by time. Di ba pag tinanong mo, gaano kalayo yung lugar na yan? Mga 2 minutes na lakad. Parang ang tinanong sa'yo layo, hindi naman yung gaano kahaba yung lalakarin, di ba? So gaano katagal, gaano kalayo yung Los Baños dito? 2 hours travel, walang traffic. So we don't, Filipinos, I'm not sure if it's cultural, but Filipinos nowadays, they tend to think of distance as time. Okay, so yung 0.82 meters is not very easy to imagine for someone who is not used to measuring things. So in using social math, we need to convert this value into something that is easy to imagine. Okay, so ano yung pwede kong i-substitute sa 0.82 meters? So na-mention ko yan kanina. Sabi ko, di ba, arm's length. So I can easily say that the bird species I am working on has a tail that is as long as my arm. Okay, so ngayon, the person that you're talking to, when you say that, they can easily look at your arm and easily imagine how long the tail is. Yeah, so yun ang social math. So another example, a juvenile crocodile can weigh as much as 55 kilos. Yeah, so what is 55 kilos? So for many people, mahirap imaginein agad kung ano yung 55 kilos. So ngayon, we have to find a concept or an image that is almost the same as 55 kilos but can easily be translated to them. Okay, so for me, it's very easy because I weigh approximately about 55 kilos. So I can say that a juvenile crocodile can weigh as much as an adult human person. Okay, so that if you say that to someone, madali nilang ma-imagine kung gaano ka different yung bigat ng batang crocodile sa isang adult na human. So ganun kalaki yung difference. Okay, isa pang example. Ano ba yung something na madaling ma-imagine na mga 50 kilos? Yan. So, naisip ko, kaban ng bigas. So, pwede mong sabihin na yung batang buhaya, kaya yan kasing bigat ng isang kaban ng bigas. Okay? So, madali na ngayon intindihin sa tao na, ganun pala kabigat kahit na bata pa yung buhaya. Okay? So, when I say the context of your audience, you have to consider the context of your audience. When you say a sack of rice, if you use this sack of rice analogy in Europe, where they buy rice in small boxes of 1 kilo na kaya natin ubusin in 1 meal. Sila 1 kilo lang 1 month na. So pag sinabi ng sack of rice, hindi nila yun maintindihan. But if you use it in Asia, if you use it in the Philippines, then it's very easy to imagine. So it's context dependent yung social math. And then lastly, we discovered a frog species with a total length of 10 millimeters. So, ano yung 10 millimeters? Siyempre, alam natin 1 cm. But for a boy who hasn't been taught the SI unit system or hasn't been taught the measurements, how will you be able to translate the length of the frog species that you discovered? What thing or what object can you imagine that is about the same length as 10 millimeters? Okay, so maybe an easy object is a coin. So you can say that we discovered a frog species that can fit inside a 25 centavo coin. So when you say that, alam ng bata, ay ang liit pala nung palakang yun. Diba? So madaling ma-imagine sa kanya how big or how long the frog species is because you compared it to something that he sees, he has experienced, and he knows exactly the size of. Okay? Yeah. So when you hear me talk about my figs and fig wasps, I work with figs and fig wasps. The wasps are actually extremely small. So they are about 1-2 millimeters. So when I tell my audience that, I gesture like this. I'm not sure if it's really maintindihan talaga siya, pero I gesture like this to say that they're extremely small, only 1-2 millimeters. Yeah, so gestures also help if you can say yung left, for example, like this like this tall, or something like that. So it will really help your audience imagine easily yung values that you're trying to transmit to them. Also, with diversity, I get a lot of questions about how diverse the fig trees are in the Philippines. So I tell them that the figs, we have about 105 species of fig trees in the Philippines. So 105, so what's that? For most people, yeah, 105, so what? Okay, so what I do is I actually put it into a context of something that they have a preconceived notion of. So I say that in the Philippines, we have 105 fig species. And that is equivalent to the number of species in the mega diverse Amazon region. Okay, so the number of species that we have in the Amazon is the same as the number of species that we have in a smaller area here in our country. So then, yung audience ko now has an idea kung gaano ka-diverse per square area yung fig species dito sa Pilipinas. Okay? So that is social math for you. So throughout my talk, I'll be giving you some hashtag challenge accepted. So trending to ngayon, hashtag challenge accepted. So I'll be giving 3 hashtag challenge accepted. Tapos, I will ask you to write down your answers in the comments, either in the Facebook or YouTube streams. So if you write down your answers, I will select the best answer dun sa 3 hashtag challenge accepted. And I will give you a National Geographic hat. Okay? Ipapadala ko yan sa inyo. Yan. So yung napipili ko na pinakamagandang sagot, then I will give you the National Geographic hat. So you're not required to answer, but if you want to answer, then please go ahead. So for the challenge accepted one, I want you to think of one result or data point from your study or one measure from your study. And then I want you to rewrite it using relatable concepts or images that will be very easy for us to imagine your result or your data point. Okay? So I'll give you about 1 minute. Yeah, so syempre meron na kayong results na naiisip, di ba? Kasi August na yun. In 1 month's time, magpe-present na kayo sa BCSP. So you think of one that you've probably written or think or thought of, then you try to rewrite it using the concepts of social math. Okay? Yeah. So, kung hindi pa po kayo tapos sumagot, okay lang po. Kahit sa end na ng webinar. Siguro mamayang gabi ko pa naman mababasa lahat ng answers nyo. Okay? So, let's proceed with tip number 2. So, you use graphs properly. So, we've been told at school that different graphs, they emphasize different aspects of your data. Okay? So, there are different types of graphs. And the data that you want to emphasize depends on the type of graph that you use. So for example, this is a pie chart. Okay, so I got this from the DOH Facebook page. So para saan ang pie charts? So for Filipinos, ang pie is hard to imagine because we don't actually have many pies here in the Philippines. So gamitin na lang natin, for example, pizza o kaya cake. Yeah, so kunwari may dumating na pizza sa bahay nyo, dumating na cake sa bahay nyo, hinati ng nanay mo, binigyan ka ng share mo, binigyan ng yung kapatid mo ng share niya. Okay? Ang pakialam mo lang is kung yung share mo ba, hindi siya mas maliit dun sa share ng kapatid mo. Diba? Yun ang iisipin mo una eh. Sino yung mas malaki? Sa akin o sa'yo? Yun ang iisipin mo, diba? Wala kang pakialam kung gaano kalaki ba yung pizza na dumating sa bahay nyo or kung gaano kalaki yung cake na dumating sa bahay nyo. Ang pakialam mo, gaano kalaki yung share mo. Okay? So, ganun din with pie graphs. Yung absolute numbers, they are not seen or they don't matter much in pie graphs. What is emphasized in pie graphs are the proportions of each category. So, for this, we can easily see that the active cases, most of them would be mild cases. So they're less asymptomatic and even less severe and critical cases. So we don't see the actual absolute numbers, how many active cases or how many total cases, but we see the proportion of those cases that are mild, asymptomatic, severe, and critical. Okay. Another example of a pie chart is this one. So I got this one from the endcov.ph website. So this tells us easily that males are more affected by COVID-19. It didn't even need to provide the percentages or the ratios. One look at the graph, then you can know that males are more affected by COVID-19. It doesn't tell you the number of males that are affected, but only the relative proportions of the male and females affected. Okay, so another type of graph is the line graph, or in Excel, this is called as a scatter plot. So in scatter plots, aside, you're not emphasizing the proportions, but you're emphasizing the absolute numbers and the patterns and trends. So if you want to show patterns or trends in your data, then you show your audience a line graph. So here we see that there's a constant increase in the confirmed and recovered cases. Yun. But if I want to know in a certain day, for example, July 4, if I want to know sa July 4, ilan dyan yung confirmed or ilan dyan yung recovered, ano yung proportion, then that's very hard to see in a line graph. That data would be better represented using a pie chart. Okay? There's a pie chart, you don't see absolute numbers. Yun. So it depends actually what data would you want to emphasize to your audience. Okay? So another type of graph is a bar graph. So we're used to seeing bar graphs like this nowadays. So bar graphs are represented by bars. So the bars represents the categories. And one advantage of bar graphs is that you can actually subdivide each category to show subcategories. So for example, this one, each bar represents an age group. But then each age group, they would show how many of that within that age group would be admitted, would be recovered, or would have died. Yun. So in bar graphs like this, you're able to show both the patterns and also the proportions. Yun. Pero for some people, it would be harder to understand kasi mas marami ka nang pinapakita. So you have to balance kung ano yung gusto mo talagang i-emphasize sa data mo. Yan. So for your video abstracts, because you can, it's going to be shown online. It's going to be shown in the public. So you can reach both scientists and non-scientists alike. So you have to think of that yung graph nyo should be simple enough so that maintindihan siya by everyone. So that yung language, yung common language is there so that we can all understand it. Yeah. So 3 more rules in making graphs. You always label and explain the axis. You show labels or legends, and you use colors appropriately or judiciously. Yeah, so to show these rules, I'm showing you a graph that we generated with my students. So in the introduction, they told you that we work with the lifespan of the wasps and we experiment on their lifespan to see how future climate change can affect the lifespan of these big wasps. So label and explain axis. Okay, so y-axis is labeled as average lifespan in minutes. Okay, check. X-axis is labeled as temperature, degrees Celsius. Okay, check. Show labels or legends. So I have 2 panels there. The one on your left is labeled as the dry panel. The one on your right is labeled as the wet. Okay, so it's properly labeled. And then I have 2 colors, a blue color and a red color. And then I have an accompanying legend to tell you what those color means. Okay, so this is a good graph to show you how the rules should be followed. Ngayon, appropriate use of colors is also using colors that make sense. Okay, we don't just put colors so that it's beautiful. Okay, it has to make sense. So for this, water is signified by the blue color. So the humid condition is represented by more water, right? So I use blue, the blue color, so that it can represent the humid condition. Red color represents heat. So I use the red color to represent the non-humid condition. Okay? So hindi siya, yung kulay, hindi yan pwedeng kung ano lang yung lumabas sa Excel or kung ano yung gusto mo, favorite color mo. Dapat, it makes sense. Yeah. So actually, this graph is not very public friendly. Kasi we are going to use it for a scientific publication, but also because it represents several layers of our data. So we actually have 3 X variables here. So temperature, season, represented by dry and wet, and humidity. So it's a bit more complex and harder to explain. So yung patterns ngayon, medyo mahirap kong i-explain sa inyo kasi masyadong marami akong variables na nilagay. So if yung audience mo is mostly non-scientist, then papalitan ko tong graph na to. Hindi ko yan ipapakita kasi I'm showing too much data points for the general public. Yan. So ano pa yung mga appropriate use of colors? So for 10%, sige, 1 out of 10 men that you will meet is colorblind. Okay? So 1 out of 10 men that you will meet ever in your life is colorblind. So that means that they will not be able to distinguish red, green, and brown. So in your graphs, do not put them together. Do not put them side by side, yung red, green, brown, or yung combinations of those colors. Because your colorblind audience will not be able to distinguish those colors. Yun. Another thing is you use colors that make sense. So for example, if I'm plotting abundances of trees in deforested areas versus non-undisturbed areas. So, yung sa deforested areas, hindi ko gagamitin na green. Okay? Hindi ako gagamit ng green na points kasi deforested nga eh. So, hindi siya intuitive pag nakita nila brown tapos forested area pala yung point na gusto mong i-show. Okay? Or makita nila green tapos deforested area pala yung ibig sabihin nun. So always make sure na intuitive yung color na gagamitin mo so that it's very easy for your audience to understand the message. Okay? Yeah. So I'd like to show this graph to you again. Okay? This is a pie chart. But if you remember the 3 rules that I just told you, merong mali tong graph na to. Ano yung mali sa graph na to? Okay, so yung kanina, we should label axis, we should show legends and labels, and we should use colors judiciously. So ang mali sa graph na to is that they're actually not showing the legend. So we don't know kung ano yung yellow, kung ano yung, ano ba yan, ecru, ano yung red, ano yung green. Fortunately, the ratios are very different. So that alam natin na yung yellow is most likely the mild cases kasi yun yung pinakamalaki. And then the off-white would be the asymptomatic. Pero for the severe and critical, mahirap na natin ma-distinguish which would be the green or which would be the red. Yun. So kulang ng legend. Yan. And then, of course, this one. Favorite graph natin. So last June 13, ni-release ng DOH, and this was actually lambasted in the social media because of several faults. So, ano yung mga nakita natin na faults? Sige, positive muna, positive. Sige, for me, ang positive dito is the use of colors. So, it's very intuitive. Kasi pink is usually associated with female, but male is associated with the blue. Pero for gender-sensitive people, they might say that this is discrimination and you're boxing the sexes into stereotypes. So hindi dapat yun ginagawa. Anyway, so just so that you're conscious of that. Pero for us, mabilis na malaman na pink, babae, male, blue. Yun, okay? So, after that, so alin pa ano yung mga mali na nakikita nyo dito? Yeah, so this is a bar graph. Yan, so merong different bars to show the age groups. Yan. So, of course, hindi natin alam kung tama ba yung magnitude ng bar or yung numbers written in the bar. So, yung 4768 ng female is smaller yung bar niya than the 3259 ng female na mas mahaba yung bar. So, I'm not sure. So, for me, andun ako sa 20 to 39 na age bracket. I'm not sure if I am more susceptible to COVID-19 or yung age group above me. Okay? So, hindi ko yun sure because of this wrong representation of the graph. So, yun yung danger in misrepresenting the graphs. Okay? Yan. So, tama yung sinabi ni Sir Henry, nag-comment siya. Yung isa pang mali is yung representation ng age groups. Okay? So, ang y-axis most of the time, you start from 0, you go up. Okay? So, that's the rule most of the time. From 0, you go up the y-axis. So, if you look at population profiling of many countries, you would see yung demographic curves. They start from the bottom, yung young population, going up, going older. So it's younger to older. Yun. So ganun yung, kasi yun ang intuitive, di ba? Alam natin, pag bata tayo, maliit tayo, tapos tumatangkad tayo, di ba? So dapat ganun yung makita sa graph nyo. Tumataas ka kapag ka mas matanda ka na. Okay? Yun. Meron lang isa ako na naiisip na hindi po pwede sa rule na yon. So, yung variable na yon, it should start from 0 sa taas, pababa, higher. Okay? Meron kayong naisip, anong variable yung dapat sa y-axis 0 sa taas, tapos pataas yung value niya habang bumababa. Yan. So for most marine scientists, it's very easy. It's actually depth. So ocean depth is represented in graphs with yung 0 lines sa pinakataas, and then increasing depth is actually pababa. Kasi you're representing what actually happens in nature. Kasi pababa yung depth. Yun. Pero most of the time, y-axis dapat 0, tapos pataas. Yan. Okay? Yeah. So ngayon, second challenge accepted. #challenge accepted 2. What is wrong with this graph? Ano ang mali sa graph na to? Okay? So, experiment ulit namin to. We work with 3 species of fig wasps. Yung si Jucundus, si Notus, and then undescribed Ceratosolem, with the y-axis representing the average lifespan in minutes. So what is wrong with this graph? So pakisulat po yung answer sa comment box sa YouTube or sa Facebook if you want to win this one. Pwede nyo rin hingin yung ganito ni Sir Henry kung gusto nyo. Okay, so bigyan ko po kayo ng 30 seconds to think about what is wrong with this graph. Yan. So, ang mga sinasabi po, scientific names are not italicized. So, tama naman yun kasi hindi ko po nahanapan sa R kung paano i-italicize yung name. So, kapag alam niyo po, please email me so that I can correct this graph. Aside from that po, dalawang legend. Ayan. Sige, 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So yung mali po sa graph na to actually is the use of colors. Wala pong sense yung color. Kasi yung three species ko are already represented by different points in the axis. So yung Yucundus ko, yung Notus, yung Ceratosaurus, yung SP, magkakaibang points na po yan. So yung use of colors ko is actually unmerited. So if I show you a graph like this one, it tells you exactly the same thing without you having to think about what the color actually means. Okay, so yung color po sa graph na to, it's a distraction to your audience. It's very beautiful, but it's a distraction. Kasi iisipin mo muna what the color represents before you think of the patterns. Okay? If it's just yung black and white, you can easily see na yung nasa gitna has lower lifespan compared to the two others. Okay? Pero kapag may kulay, isipin mo ba nasan yung red, nasan yung green, nasan yung blue, yung ganon. Okay, so use colors judiciously. It doesn't mean you can use it. It doesn't mean you can show it. Dapat gamitin siya. Okay? So, ito po yung isang example na we need colors naman because the x-axis is now represented by the different temperature levels. Within each temperature level, I have 3 points. I have 3 dots. So in order to differentiate those dots, I use color. Okay? So yun. So use colors only when necessary. So hindi po aesthetic ang color sa mga graphs. They need to mean something. So make sure yung color itself is intuitive. They need to mean something and they need to be there for a reason. Hindi dahil kaya mong maglagay ng kulay, dapat lagyan mo ng kulay. Hindi po ganon. Okay? We are distracting them with color. So use it only when necessary. Yan. So third point is we use tables only when absolutely needed. Because tables are harder to understand than graphs because we have more numbers in the tables and you have no visual trends. So mahirap po hanapin yung trends when you're just presented with numbers, when you're bombarded with numbers. So this is a table that we see very commonly now in Facebook. So this was issued by the Quezon City government showing the number of active cases, the number of persons who died, and those who have recovered in the different barangays in District 4 in Quezon City. So, immediately, para sa'yo, ang dami namang numbers niyan. Bakit ko kailangan ng table na yan? Okay? But actually, this table is very important. Kasi, ikaw, iba yung barangay mo sa barangay ng kaibigan mo. So, kailangan yung makita yung lahat ng numbers na to para lahat makaalam kung ano yung current status. So although tables show very large numbers and we can't easily see the proportions or the trends, in some cases, it's very necessary to show the tables like this one. Okay? Yeah. So another table, I will show you another table. So before I show you this next table, magdi-disclaimer po muna ako. Yeah, so this is a table coming as a result of a simulation. So kasama po ako sa isang group dito sa UP who simulate yung COVID-19 numbers using data from DOH and additional data from telcos telling us of our mobility. So kung gaano ka tayo gumagalaw based on our cell phones. Kaya yung gawin ng Smart at Globe. Ingat kayo, okay? Yeah. So, this is not verified by epidemiologists, and this was generated early last month. So hindi po ito updated. So please take this with a grain of salt, okay? Yeah. So this is the data that I showed to my friends. So yeah, nag-screenshot po ako nito sa friends ko kasi I was worrying about yung situation in NCR and I wanted them to be aware na matagal pa yung laban and then mataas yung cases talaga na maaabot. Yan. Tapos sabi sa akin nung friend ko, sabi ko sa kanila wag nilang i-share sa public. Tapos ang reply nung barkada ko sa akin, sabi niya, alam mo Lillian, kahit i-share ko yan sa public, hindi nila maintindihan yan. Okay? So for me, that was a wake-up call. Kasi for me, this was okay. This was good to understand. Pero yun pala, when they're bombarded with numbers and no one is explaining the numbers to them, this is very easy. It is very hard to digest. Yun. So what they asked me, what the group asked me to do is to translate these scenarios into something that is useful for the general public. So ang ginawa ko, gumawa ko ng storya. Ninarrate ko siya. Okay? So scenario 1, sabi ko, pumapasok si Juan 6 times kada linggo. So yung 6 times represents full mobility after lockdown. So yun. Kasi walang nagbago. That before lockdown, 6 times siya. Ngayon, 6 times pa rin siya. Tapos sinabi ko, kapag gayahin natin si Juan, 7, 7 sa bawat 10 mong kakilala ay magkakasakit. So that represents a total infection rate of 69.1%, which is 7 out of 10. So now, with these scenarios, translate ko yung numbers into something that they can easily digest. So actually, when I report or when we talk to people, baka hindi na kailangan yung table, di ba? Baka ito na lang story, ito na lang narration or translation of the table yung kailangan. Yun, so you have to think of that when we present tables to the general public. Yan. Number 4, we emphasize estimates rather than p-values. So estimates are means. Or means, median, ganon. They are more important than p-values. Why? So ito yung example. Previously logged forests were more diverse compared to intact rainforests. And then I show the p-value, the df, and the p-value. But it doesn't tell me, yung p-value doesn't tell me how much more diverse the previously logged forests are to intact rainforests. Wala akong kayang makuha from the p-value to tell me how much more diverse these forests are. As opposed to if I write down the estimate of the biodiversity index. So for example, previously logged forests were more diverse with index 0.6 compared to intact rainforests with index 0.3. So with this, madali mong makita na yung previously logged forests are actually twice as much more diverse than intact rainforests. Okay, so the effect is clearly seen when you use means, when you show means rather than the p-values. Another example, wasps lived longer during the wet season than during the dry season. So I have a p-value, a df, and a p-value. Again, with the p-value, maliit, di ba, ang ganda-ganda. Pero does it give you an idea how much longer the wasps live kapag wet season than during the dry? Wala. So I don't have the effect. Yung effect, hindi ko yun alam. Ano yung effect ng variable ko? Hindi ko yun makukuha from the p-value. So it's always better to show the means. So wasps lived longer during the wet season, which is 3.2 days, than during the dry season, which is about 8.8 days. So now I know that wasps can live about 4 times as long sa wet season than during the dry season. So I see the effect of my variable. But since you're going to present before scientists and non-scientists alike, then maybe the combination of these two would be best. So you include the estimate and then you include also the p-values. Yeah. And then lastly, you avoid jargon. So as I've mentioned in the start of this presentation, we have to use words that are common between you and your audience so that they can easily imagine what you're telling them. So the best way is to use analogies. So ang example ng analogy for me, because yung wasps ko and my pigs are in a species-specific na interaction. So how do I tell my non-scientist friends what species-specific means? Okay, so ang best analogy that I was able to think of is a key and a lock mechanism. So meron akong lock, for example, meron akong lock. Ito yung fig tree. It can only be unlocked by one key, which is the wasp going inside. Okay? So I have a lock and a key mechanism. So ngayon, madali for them to imagine, ganun pala yung fig wasp na interaction. Pag wala yung susi, hindi mabubuksan yung lock. So ganun din, pag wala yung wasp, hindi mabubuksan yung fig tree. Yun. So ngayon, yung best way to actually identify yung jargon, kasi unfortunately, ikaw mismo, yung scientist mismo, hindi mo alam kung ano yung jargon kasi it's become so common to you na hindi mo alam, hindi pala naiintindihan ng ibang tao yun. So you actually have to use your friends and your family as your audience so that they are the ones who tell you, ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng ectoparasite? Hindi ko alam yun. Diba? Sa atin napaka-common, pero sa iba pala, mahirap siyang intindihin. So you always have it's best advice is to use your friends and family. Present to them first para malaman nyo alin yung concepts that are harder to understand than most. Okay? Yeah. So itong presentation na to, nakita ko itong infographic na to from Forest Foundation IG page about 2 weeks ago. So sabi niya, to start with, our interaction with the natural world, they say, is at the root of most illnesses. So 3/4 of diseases begin in animals and cross over to humans. Yeah, so madaling intindihin, di ba? Tapos napaisip ako, sabi ko parang narinig ko na to dati. Tapos naisip ko, nagtuturo kasi ako ng biogeography, di ba? And in class, we have a topic on biogeography of infectious diseases. So sabi ko, i-review ko nga yung mga articles that we discussed in class. Baka makita ko tong part na to. And lo and behold, I did. So in one of the articles written by Jones and his co-authors published in Nature in 2008, meron dun isang statement that said 71.8% of these zoonotic emerging infectious diseases events were caused by pathogens with a wildlife origin. So nakita ko tong statement na to, tapos binalikan ko yung sa Forest Foundation na infographic. They say almost the same thing. Except na ako, even as a scientist, parang mas preferred ko yung sinabi ng Forest Foundation kasi ang daling intindihin. Okay? So even yung mga ganitong bagay, yung hindi mo paggamit ng zoonotic, hindi mo paggamit ng pathogens, or even yung pag-convert ng 71.8 to 3/4, they really mean a lot for an audience na they don't speak the scientist talk. Okay? Yeah. So since I'm running out of time, skip ko na to. I'll go straight to the #challenge accepted 3. So I want you to think of your favorite scientific concept or term. And then explain it to us using analogies or comparisons or simple words. Okay? So think of your favorite concept and then try to explain it to us in the comment section using analogies, comparisons, or simple words. Yun. So for me, yung in-explain ko sa inyo na concept is yung species-specific by using yung analogy with a key and lock mechanism. Yan. So, kapag pag may naisip na po kayo, maybe pag may na-identify na kayong scientific concept, maybe you can just write it down and then you can use the rest of the afternoon to think about how to explain this concept to us using analogies and comparisons. Okay? So, mamayang gabi ko na lang po babasahin lahat ng mga sasagot. Yan. So, para matapos na po natin itong presentation na to. So, just a recap. How do you effectively communicate your data? We use the concept of social math. You translate yung numbers into something that is easier to imagine for your audience. You use graphs properly. So you select the right graph depending on the data you want to emphasize. You label the axis properly. You use colors judiciously, making sure that they are there for a reason and the color is intuitive. Third is we use tables only when absolutely needed. If you can remove the table, then you don't need the table there. Okay. Number 4, we emphasize estimates or means rather than p-values because means they tell us the effect of our variable that the p-values cannot tell us. So we emphasize these means rather than the p-values. And then lastly, we avoid jargon so that we can reach as much audience as possible. Okay po? So this is my last slide po. Thank you very much for listening and I hope you were able to learn a thing or two in this talk. Salamat po.
Good morning, and thank you very much for that very, very interesting talk, Ma'am Lillian. Uunahan ko na ng tanong, ha? I will ask. Ang gusto ko talagang itanong ay, anong schedule mo for French tutorials? Pwede magpaturo? Nakakabilib. I think we'd like to hear that once again. Can you ako sobra akong na-amaze lang. Can you greet your students or your colleagues in French once again?
Bonjour tout le monde. J'espère que tu vas bien.
Wow, okay. Hindi ko na po gagayahin, baka ako'y mapahiya. Sige. Okay, very interesting presentation, Ma'am Lillian. And I'd like to just maybe insert this note. Ma'am Lillian shared with us a very, very nice slide in the beginning from Daily Inquirer, saying that the scientists are saying that masks need not be worn in Metro Manila. Okay? Emphasize ko po, that was for the Taal eruption. Baka po kasi sabihin ng iba, uy, sinabi ng BCSP, hindi na kailangang mag-mask sa Metro Manila. Okay? Iba po ang COVID. Sa Taal eruption po yun, ha? Okay, sige. And then I really, really like Ma'am Lillian's comment that simplifying is not dumbing it down. Okay? Would you like to explain that further, Miss Lillian, especially to our teachers? Kasi di ba, teachers are guilty sometimes of talking down to students.
Yeah. So when we use simple terms to explain things, it doesn't mean that we are talking down or we are dumbing down our talk. So most likely narinig niyo na po yung sinabi na kapag kaya mong i-explain yung trabaho mo in very simple words, ibig sabihin, mas magaling ka or mas master mo yung craft mo. So, ganun po siya. Kasi ibig sabihin, naiintindihan mo talaga siya so that you don't need to hide behind technical terms. You can actually use common words to explain yung concepts that you are working with.
Okay. We have a request from Sir Perry. Can you say French? In French, malayo pa po ba, Manong? Or I want to load, adjay tibanger. Okay. Yeah, pagbigyan natin Sir Perry. Malayo pa po ba, Manong? In French.
Manong? Paano i-convert yung Manong?
Manong. Okay. Baka magalit yung nagtanong kasi may nabasa akong tanong dito, medyo mahaba. I'd like to remind our viewers to repost their questions because we are getting flooded with the challenge accepted. Wag po kayong magpadala ng challenge accepted. Dumating na po yung Lala Move ni Ma'am Lillian. Sorry, ako na yung nanalo. Biro lang. Okay. Yes, continue sending in the challenge accepted. But please, for now, if you asked the question earlier, please repost kasi medyo na-swamp sa challenge accepted. Here it is. Okay. From Alan Velasquez. There are certain units of measurement that every country commonly use. For example, in the US, they use Fahrenheit and miles most of the time. As compared to there, okay. It's already flashed. Oh, nawala. As compared to the majority of countries that uses Celsius and kilometers. When applying for a publication, okay, sige, we can see the question. Oh, medyo naputol. Sige, maybe the first question. When applying for a publication, are there international or local standards on what units to use?
Yan. So, thank you for the question. Actually, naka-specify po yan per journal.
Yes, it's there. It should be there in the guidelines, no?
So, sila po yung magsasabi kung ano yung gusto nilang units na makita dun sa paper nyo. So,
Yes.
depende if US-based, if UK-based, ganun po.
Even the colors you can use, no? Sometimes bawal pa nga, actually. And the second part is of the question, there was a second question there from Alon. Should we use military time accompanied by a time zone? Well, of course, no, it really depends on the journal. Pero what's your take on the use of military time versus yung may AM, PM?
For me po, preferred ko yung military time kasi it's more, well, yung French systems, doon ako nasanay, sorry. Pero yun po. Opo.
And
Hindi naman kailangan.
on personally speaking, I'd like systems that conserve ink, no? So if we can do away with the AM PM, mas maganda. Although bottom line, jargon pa rin ata iyon, no, military time. Kasi I think not everyone is very familiar that you need to subtract by 12. Okay. Sige. Greetings from Amy Lynn and a request. Cool discussion. Please repeat for our high school research supervisors. Ma'am Amy or Amy Lynn, I think that is your job. Since you attended, I think you can now echo this to your high school research supervisors. Or maybe just invite them to watch the recording. Okay, sige. From Jerby Ann. I study pollinators before. Oh, it's a comment. Okay, sige. Tinatranslate ko na lang na powder ng bulaklak yung yellow powder. Okay. Ano nga ba ang magandang translation sa pollen? Hindi to pollen angel. Sorry, hindi ko matiis. Sige po. Ma'am Lillian, the translation yata, ano kaya ang magandang translation for pollen? Yung hindi jargon.
Actually, yung terms na pollination and pollen, naiintindihan nila ngayon ng general public because of yung studies on yung bees, yung pagkawala ng bees. So, alam na nila ngayon kung ano ang pollinator, alam nila yung pollen. So, yung pollen, safe to use na siya.
And sasabihin ko na on air, I use the term sperm for my students. No, it's not really very different. So it's like the sperm cell for plants, I guess. No. Okay. Scrolling through, puro talaga tayo challenges. Okay. Wala na tayo sa bottom. Okay. There is a question from Paolo Pagaduan. Okay. I hope you can include next time from where you are because we'd like to highlight that. Okay, from Paolo, do you agree that scientists are not the best at communicating the results of their studies? Okay, so our top coral scientist said the same thing. There are other sectors that are better at communications work. So kumbaga tumahimik na daw tayo, ibigay natin sa iba yung information dissemination. Okay, what's your take on this, Ma'am Lillian?
Yung take ko dito is that ito yung thinking nila before this recent year. So yung scientists, they thought that they can do away with communicating their science just to magkulong lang sa lab. Ako yung bahala mag-generate ng results. Ibibigay ko yung result ko sa science communicator or sa journalist, and then sila na yung bahala mag-translate. But look at what that has led us to. Ngayon, hirap na hirap yung scientists to reach out to the general public. Because ganun yung nakasanayan natin na akala natin pwede pala tayong magkulong lang sa sarili nating mundo. When in fact, hindi yun pwede. Kailangan na natin siyang baguhin. Kailangan natin matuto kung paano magsalita na makaka-reach tayo, makakakuha tayo ng audience na hindi lang yung scientists yung nakikinig sa atin. Yun. So, I think it's good to accept it na meron tayong weaknesses. Kasi sa atin, nasanay na tayo sa complicated terms or very precise terms. But when we recognize that we have that weakness, then we can start improving it. So yun po yung maganda with webinars like this because it exposes us to a whole new culture that we need to start adopting dito sa Pilipinas so that yung science is put forward when it comes to making laws, making recommendations, ordinances, mga ganun po.
Yeah. And if you need further proof, Paolo, go to Game of Thrones. May realization si Samuel Tarly doon sa ginagawa ng mga maesters in training sa Old Town. Okay. Sige, from Dan David Valle Cruz, good morning po, from Cavite State University. If we were to explain to our audience an obscure organism, can we use pop culture references such as cartoons to allow them to visualize the organism?
Yes, I think that's a really good idea. So, yung naisip ko nga, for example, competition or parasitism, naisip ko na parang pwede natin gamitin yung Voldemort Harry Potter na prophecy na one cannot exist if the other is there. Parang ganun. So, you use yung mga trending na mga Taylor Swift na mga or yung mga K-pop so that you can reach yung younger audiences din.
That's a challenge for the young ones who are in our audience whenever we try to prepare PowerPoint or presentations for the younger generation. Let's spend a few moments looking up. Sino na ba ang mga sikat ngayon? Sino na ba ang pwede nating gawing anecdote? Kasi kung napako pa rin tayo sa mga lumang mga pop idols, baka hindi na tayo mapakinggan. I had a shock of my life in a class when I asked if anyone has heard of Beatles songs and only one or two of them raised their hands. So medyo kailangan tayo mag-update. And there is another one here, another question from, okay, so there. From Ed Perez Belen, kamusta po ang paggamit natin sa mga katutubong wika at hindi po Filipino katutubo po para sa SciComm? Okay. Epektibo po ba o inefficient dahil sa dami ng technical na salita?
Para sa akin po, magiging very effective po siya kapag kayong nagsasalita is yung native speaker talaga. So, parang sa akin po, ang kinalakihan ko talaga Tagalog. So, mahihirapan po akong gawin siya sa ibang wika. Pero kapag kayong study mo yon, tapos yun yung site mo, maganda pa talaga na gamitin nyo yung native language dun sa lugar na yon para mas madaling maintindihan ng mga tao. Yun po. So, kung hindi man maging eksakto yung translation nyo sa term, pwede nyo naman pong gumamit lang ng comparisons or analogy. So, better pa rin po yun kaysa yung hindi natin susubukan.
Okay. I'd like to add that we should also not underestimate our indigenous people's capacity to understand new terms. No? Kung hindi po talaga kaya i-translate ang plankton, halimbawa, or microscope, pwede naman pong ituro yan. Okay, makukuha nila yan, no? Yung bagong salita, kumbaga. Ganon din naman tayo, no? Hindi natin alam ang ibig sabihin dati ng ibon, pero natuto tayo at iba po ang ebon. Okay. Sige po.
Opo. Naalala ko lang, Sir Henry, sa mga field guides namin. Actually, mas kabisado na nila yung scientific names ngayon kaysa sa amin.
Yes,
Nagtuturo sila ng ma'am, yan yung Litsea, ganyan. Kasi nga, sila yung nakakita nun araw-araw eh. So, tama si Sir Henry. Hindi dapat natin i-underestimate yung capacity to learn.
And there is one here from Junegreg Kual. Okay. I'd like to practice reading and understanding numbers or statistics in journals. How do I start? Okay, meron po bang mga online courses or books? He is an incoming third-year med bio student in UST.
I think yung best recourse dito is to try to enroll in a biostatistics course. So kung walang offered sa UST, then marami naman online. So you can try looking at Coursera, maraming online biostatistics course doon, so that meron kayong basics nung pag-understand ng statistics. When you have the basics, then pwede ka nang mag-move forward by searching yung specific na tests or analysis na ginawa dun sa journal na yon, so that you can further understand. Pero yung start talaga is biostatistics na course.
Okay, and June Greg, if I may, pwede kang mag-member sa BCSP so you have access to not only expert but beautiful mentors like Ma'am Lillian who can guide you if you have more questions. Okay, Paolo a while ago is coming from the Center for Philippine Biodiversity Journalism. Wow, meron na pala tayong ganun, no? Very, very interesting. Okay. How can you, from Isabella Guts, I hope I read your name correctly, how can you encourage non-science students to enjoy scientific terms? Good luck, no? So, especially for the millennials.
Yeah. I think po, it has to come first from the scientist. Tingin ko yung scientist needs to make effort to translate it. Pero for me, there are a lot of scientists in Instagram actually that are very good science communicators. If you want your students to enjoy science, for me, yung Instagram is a good starting point.
Yes. Being young at heart, no, I think is a good, try po nating makisali sa mga games ng kabataan. Kung may anak kayo, maki-Mobile Legends kayo or hindi na po ba uso yun? Okay, para lang po, pa rin tayo, medyo bata pa rin ang ating puso, even if makolesterol na. Okay, from Sir Perry, how dangerous could it be for simplifying scientific data that could be used to misinterpret, okay, and misrepresent the actual principle or result of the study? Okay, case in point, the way our politicians seem to be unconcerned with the trend of the rising cases of the pandemic. So may hugot si Sir Perry, don't worry, it's a common hugot everyone is feeling. Your take on this, Ma'am Lillian?
I think when we simplify, meron ngang chance na hindi natin ma-translate yung lahat ng data. So I think dapat makausap talaga yung policymakers, ma-explain sa kanila yung consequences nung mga values that we are generating. So far, merong mga tao sa DOH that listen, kaya lang hindi nakakaabot sa taas. So yun yung problem. I think for specifically for the COVID-19 pandemic, hindi nagkulang yung scientists to reach out to the policymakers. So yung mahirap lang talaga is ma-reach mo lang at a certain level. Anything above that, mahirap na talaga siyang ma-reach. Yun. So
Yeah,
for me, disclaimer talaga na ito yung data namin, this is what it's telling us. So ito yung conclusions, and you shouldn't take yung data and yung conclusions out of the context.
Yeah, this reminds me of the basic human nature trait, no? That if it does not happen to you, it's not relevant, no? There was this volcanologist who was saying that we were very lucky with Pinatubo because it erupted, I think 2 or 3 days before the warning to after the warning to evacuate happened. So if the eruption did not happen, if it happened 4 or 5 days later pa, when the warning was issued, more and more or thousands of people could have died when it erupted. No? So parang ganon. Parang siguro, no, they don't realize until they get infected. No, na, oh, oo nga, sorry, dapat nag-mask ako or something like that. No? Okay, so last comment po from Michiko Buot. It's a comment about, okay, I think scientists must work together with science communicators, media practitioners, all the more. Okay, so working together is not just giving the data away. Yes, okay, so sometimes at fault po ang scientist dyan na, teka, ipapublish ko muna ito or something, no? Okay, yes, collaboration is key, hence BCSP webinars po. Okay, since that was not a question, I'd like to insert this one. So from Jane Manarpiis, okay, what to you are the effective platforms in teaching biodiversity during lab class? Oh, okay. So challenge po lahat yan for us teachers. How do we teach more effectively
Parang dapat
biodiversity?
si Sir Andy po yung sumagot nito.
Sorry. Wag ako kasi
Parang sa'yo ata yun, Sir.
pala kanina. In the beginning of the week. Yes, your take on this, Ma'am Lillian.
Sa amin po, meron pong Journal of Visual Experimentation. So you can search it po sa internet, JOVE, Journal of Visual Experimentation. So yung journal na po ito, it publishes video abstracts like yung what you're going to require for the students sa BCSP, but showing you the techniques. So meron pong technique sa lab, meron technique sa field. Yun po. So it's a good method for teaching your lab class during this pandemic.
Okay, I hope you took note of that. And I am sorry, we need to follow our schedule. And rest assured that our organizers, our presenter for today would take the time to respond to your questions in our comment page. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lillian, for that very, very informative discussion for today. Okay, so at this point, I would like to welcome our BCSP president, sorry, our president, Sir Rainier Manalo, who will be awarding our certificate of appreciation to today's speaker. Sir Rainier. Oh, okay. So I think we are having some internet difficulties. I-share ko lang po, no? One of my takeaways from your talk, Ma'am Lillian,
Yes
is
po.
that yung the power of shapes, color, and images. Okay, we understand this better than text. I did a quick Google search, okay, on this, and you know what? There are 359 million hits or journal articles that came out proving that we do understand images, color, and shapes better than text. So I'd like to shout out to everyone there, please stop using slides na puro text. Okay. Na puro sentences, no? So try to add color, shape, and images to your slides. Whether you are a grade school teacher or you are someone convincing a relative of Henry C. to give you millions to save the Sierra Madre, please avoid slides na puro text. Okay? So yun lang po. And then very interesting note here from Ma'am Lillian, and we should not forget that. Okay, 1 out of 10 men are color blind. Okay, red, green, and brown. Ano po kaya ang relasyon neto sa pagiging love is blind? Okay. I think nahalata na ako na I'm just buying some time for some technical glitches. Okay, so we are back on track, and I'd like to welcome once again our BCSP President, Sir Rainier Manalo.
Yan, magandang umaga po sa atin lahat. Magandang umaga po, Dr. Lillian.
Good morning po.
Interesting po yung inyong topic at marami tayong challenger. Nag-accept ng challenge. Yes, natin. So, awards the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Lillian Jennifer Rodriguez in grateful recognition for your invaluable contribution to BCSP's Biodiversity Online digital workshop series through your talk entitled Let Your Data Speak for Itself, Effectively Communicating Your Sense to the Public, 2020. Signed, yours truly, Rainier Manalo, President, Biodiversity Conservation Society of the Philippines. Congratulations
Salamat po.
Salamat.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sir Henry?
Yes, okay.
Okay.
And since this is our last day, Sir Rainier, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
We will continue to award the certificate of appreciations to all of our volunteers in grateful recognition for their to BCSP 2020 with the theme Conservation, Communicating Conservation in the Age of Social Media. Given this 30th day of July 2020, signed yours truly, Rainier Manalo, President, Conservation Society. Giselle Belardo, Luis Abigail de Loyola, Frances May Tenorio, Sildani Don Tagaw, Mary Grace Kiao, Tessa Marie Fernandez, Willem Van de Ven, Henry Calilong, and Cynthia Layusa Oliveros. And the BCSP also awards this certificate of appreciation to our energetic moderator, Mr. Henry Calilong, for his grateful recognition for your invaluable contribution to BCSP's Biodiversity Online Digital Workshop Series held on 27th to 30 July 2020 with the theme Conservation, Communicating Conservation in the Age of Social Media. As moderator of the 4-day event, given the certificate given this 30th day of July 2020. Signed, yours truly, Rainier Manalo, President, Biodiversity Conservation Society of the Philippines. Congratulations, Sir Henry, sa magiting na pagtatapos. Talagang natapos natin ang ating 4-day event na ito.
Thank you very much din po, and congratulations to everyone who is running BCSP as volunteers. Very, very good job po. Very, very strong. Okay. Yes, sir. Closing po.
Sa pagtatapos natin, ulitin natin po, good morning sa lahat. It's an exciting 4 days event of digital learning event. In this event, more than half of our attendees are professionals, and the other half are grad students, undergraduates, and high schools from all corners of the country. I congratulate you all for staying with us to the end of this workshop. Also, please allow me to acknowledge the volunteers work. Special mention to Miss Michelle Encomienda, BCSP Operations Manager, the most complicated task of technical production. Together with the rest of the production team, committee headed by Professor Fernandez, team headed by our Vice President, is full persistent support in this digital workshop series. Muli po namin kayo inaanyayahan sa darating na August 22 researchers sa ating digital online forum. Sa mga nakiisa, hanggang sa muli, inaasahan po namin ang inyong patuloy na pagsubaybay at pagdalo sa mga susunod pa nating kaganapang pangkalikasan. Maraming salamat po uli sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Sir Rainier, for those very kind closing remarks. Just to emphasize our August 22 to 23 engagement, for those of you who haven't registered as participants for our very first Biodiversity online forum. This is very exciting. We will be featuring some 40 student presenters po. Okay, some of them are high schoolers. And at this point, I'd like to really emphasize how wonderful for BCSP to accommodate even high school students. No, when we first did this with the students of Holistic Education and Development Center or HEDSEN, we were very nervous. Pero karadura lang po, no? Kapal mooks lang, no? Makipagsabayan sa mga may Ph.D, sa mga college graduates. High school lang kami, pero at least nakikinig kayo, no? So that was a very nice experience for our students way back in 2004. And I'm sure your attendance as participants will also be very meaningful to these students on August 22 to 23. Okay, so watch out for that, please. Mark it in your calendars, okay? And I believe we need to remind them about the survey at this point. Okay, so kindly make sure that we fill out that survey, okay? It's there in your screens, surveymonkey.com/r/BCSP data presentation. So kindly fill that up and submit it before 0800. Ayan na, military time. 0800 tomorrow so that you can or you are valid to claim your e-certificate. Okay, and this is what the survey looks like. Very important po. Not just for the certificate, it is also a very nice guideline feedback system for us as we try to better work with this new normal conditions that we have. So before we sign out, another last thank you for our speakers, okay, who've been with us since day one, our organizers, volunteers, and especially our sponsors, okay, who have been providing with us, providing support, okay, and allowing us, making it possible for us to organize this event. Okay, I'm sorry, I think I'm also breaking up the Biodiversity Management Bureau, DNR, Team Energy Foundation Incorporated, Energy Development Corporation, and Crocodilus Porosus Philippines Incorporated. I hope you enjoyed this 4-day series, and I hope we all learned a lot from each other's presentations. And of course, last but not least, kindly bow, show your appreciation, or clap for the following people whose names are on screen, without whose work and constant volunteering would not have made this possible. So for the organizing team, Michelle Encomienda, Giselle Belardo, Luis Abigail De Loyola, Frances May Tenorio, Seldane Don Tagaw, Mary Grace Giyaw, Desa Marie Fernandez, Willem Van de Ven, Henry Kalilong, and Cynthia Layusa. For the Abstracts Review Committee, kung kilala niyo po ito, start sending them apples para ma-approve ang ating abstract. Joke lang. Desa Marie Fernandez, Leticia Afuang, Ace Kevin Amarga, John Paul Payopay, Joan Daryl Abellera, Nikki Dayan Realubit, Jake Wilson Binaday. Our Conservation Awareness SOCMED Committee, Rina Bernabe, Ruby Magturo, Frances May Tenorio, Jay Fidelino, and Cynthia Layusa. Maraming salamat po. This is your moderator, Henry Calilong from Hedsen, signing out and see you at our next session.